The passage I just read a few minutes ago about his respect, the rare and high reverence for Phoebe's individuality. I'm not going to read it again. Okay, so this is a change, I submit, in Holgrave. People who are Democrats, small d, do not genuinely respect the individuality of others. But then near the end of the book, page 314, we find in mine, and it's in the genuinely last page or chapter of the book called The Departure, and it's more than halfway through the chapter, in the section or the paragraph that says the country house is certainly a very fine one. Anyone see it? The country house is certainly a very fine one.
Page 221.
Page 221. Here Holgrave, after they've left the town and they've gone to survey some future place that they might live, here he analyzes a house. Now the old Holgrave would have said what? He would have said what Bayless Wheeler said. Find the old trap, tear it down, and build something modern. Right? That's what he would have said. That's the Holgrave of page 183 and 84 in my edition. But the new Holgrave, I'm going to say the Claude-like Holgrave, the Claude Wheeler type Holgrave, says the country house is certainly a very fine one. So far as the plan goes, observed Holgrave, as the party were discussing their future arrangements. But I wonder that the late judge, being so opulent and with a reasonable prospect of transmitting his wealth to descendants of his own, should not have felt the propriety of embodying so excellent a piece of domestic architecture in stone rather than in wood. Then every generation of the family might have altered the interior to suit its own taste and convenience, while the exterior, through the lapse of years, might have been adding venerableness to its original beauty, and thus giving the impression of permanence, which I consider essential to the happiness of any one moment. Why? Cried Phoebe, the happiest girl in the whole USA. How wonderfully your ideas are changed! A house of stone indeed. It is but 2 or 3 weeks ago that you seemed to wish people to live in something as fragile and temporary as a bird's nest. Ah, Phoebe, I told you how it would be, said the artist, with a half-melancholy laugh. You find me a conservative already. And go on. Even further, these are exactly parallel moments in the book, and we see Holgrave is completely changed. He says the interior might be able to change some, but not the exterior. He wants the exterior built in stone, in something permanent. Why? What's so great about permanence? He says that it lends itself to the happiness of any one moment. Some things are beyond changing. The particular laws that govern us, the internal things, they can change all the time. But the exterior, that is the constitutional order, that shouldn't change. The clothes you wear may change, but that you wear clothes doesn't change. Taking pride in the big thing, in the exterior, in the stone frame, is one of the things that makes human beings happy. And it needs to be permanent, because otherwise, why invest your time and your pride in it? So part of being happy is being a part of something bigger and permanent. Which doesn't mean that Holgrave has hardwood floors. He could be Mr. Shag Carpet. Right? The interior can change. That's still, I don't know if that's still around, but that's an old kind of carpeting. The interior can change. That is, the particular things that make particular moments happy, that are affected by fashion, that stuff may change. but all within the context of important truths. He is changed, and hence he's ready to love Phoebe, and he's ready to marry, and he might even get a haircut. From Hepzibah's perspective, I think that's all he'd have to do.
She could love her turban.
That's right. So, to sum up, I'll do my best here to sum up. Aristocracy can mask tyranny. It's easy to see how aristocracies can mask tyranny. And we see it in Colonel Pynchon. And I think it's safe to say that America was founded on that observation. Aristocracies, monarchy, hereditary social arrangements can mask tyrannical ambitions. The mask sometimes is very thin. But that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is, aristocracy can also represent pride in building good institutions. It can represent manners, and it can represent grace. Democracy can also mask tyrannical ambitions. We see this in two ways in the novel. First, in Judge Pynchon, who, currying favor with the many, nevertheless is all about himself. He's a genuine demagogue. And we also see democracy masking tyrannical temptations in Holgrave, the younger. The desire to control the world, exercise empire on it, and without the consent of future generations, shape them in the way that you want. But this democratic impulse can be improved too. And it is over the course of time in Holgrave, who becomes accepting of the good things of the world. Accepting, in other words, of inequalities. That is, he recognizes Phoebe's excellence and proposes to her on the basis of it. It's pitiful, it's pathetic, but Phoebe, I love you. Would you make me the happiest man in all of Massachusetts? So democracy can be resentful, unhealthy, and inhuman, just like aristocracy. But each of them can be improved as well. Does anyone have any questions about Hawthorne's teaching or this book? Or I should say, Hawthorne's teaching in this book. I'm really not prepared to talk about the marble faun today. Yes, Mr. Rhodes?
With the idea of like kind of Holgrave changing and wanting to build a house, so there's that scene with Clifford and they're on the train and he's talking about how you shouldn't ever build. Is that like him transitioning out of aristocracy into just like pure democracy or?
Well, I think that has already happened in him.
Yeah.
I do believe that happens in the second to last chapter, where they take the train to see the judge's home, and So I read those 3 episodes, right? We saw Holgrave on Holmes first, and then we saw him hypnotizing Phoebe but not taking advantage of her, and then we saw Holgrave on Holmes again. I believe that the main fulcrum of his character takes place right there. There's, I think he has every intention of doing to Phoebe what his ancestor did to Alice, but he doesn't. He goes in a different direction. And it's explained by the fact that he has this rare and high reverence for other people, which I think is what the natural rights philosophy is at its best. Not like the way we throw around the word rights today, but natural rights philosophy at its best. And that's the fulcrum on which his character changes. So everything after that moment, when he doesn't take advantage of Phoebe, is him coming to appreciate the implications of what he didn't do and why he didn't do it. So I think on that train trip, he's already come to have a certain appreciation for the permanence that would exist in a home. No, I think that's what he says. He comes to like have more respect for Clifford and the others as well. Is that good? Any other questions? Miss Itza?
Do you think Clifford is democratic to some extent? I didn't think he was until him and Hepzibah ran away, and then on page like 182 he's talking about he's going on the rant to the train driver. He says, "There's no such unwholesome atmosphere as that of an old home, rendered poisonous by one's defunct forefathers and relatives. I speak of what I know. There's a certain house with my familiar recollection, one of those Phoege Gables. There are 7 of them, projecting storied edifices, such as you occasionally see in our older towns." Blah blah blah. Like, he seems to be like, he doesn't really talk much, and then he goes on this like giant rant, and then he talks about like the telegraph and like all these things. And
So here's the way I would approach that. All right. I think Clifford is a genuine aristocrat. That is, he's not a false aristocrat. The experiences of his life have shown him the evils of hereditary homes or something like that. That is, it's shown him that the basis of his family was laid in injustice and crime. And he himself is a victim of the next generation of that crime. So he recognizes the evil, the tyrannical temptation of this false aristocracy that is based on birth. But I think Clifford is a genuine lover of beauty. The distinction here is that aristocrats, that I would make, is aristocrats love beauty and leisure. Democrats love the useful. Okay, once again, small d, demo. And Clifford is a genuine aristocrat. That is, he loves beauty and appreciates it and could have lived a life as a painter, is someone who genuinely was good at a craft for the sake of the craft. Right? So he represents genuine as opposed to false aristocracy. That's why I look at him. I mean, I think the best argument against my position would be, if that's so, why does he like monkeys so much? I mean, isn't that just kind of amusing? Like, he goes out and watches the guy who makes the monkey dance, right? And so what, that doesn't seem, but I think he's been corrupted by all his years in prison. So, I mean, it's a tough situation to be in when you're Clifford, right? It's tough to be Winston Churchill, spend 40 years in prison because of your brother who took away your deed, and then come out and say, wow, this aristocracy is a great deal. And that's kind of what Clifford is. But his point is true there, right? His point is true his house has been really filled with bad stuff. Is that satisfactory? Any other questions? Mr. Graff?
So would you say like how Clifford doesn't view him? I would say like Clifford, just because he's a pension doesn't mean that he's evil. But the judge would be not evidence of that, just because he is a pension, he's still, it doesn't really matter his name, he's still evil no matter what.
Yes, it's on the merits.
Right.
Because, some of the other pensions are harmless at the very least, the current generation.
There's a part where when Phoebe first meets Judge Minchin, she believes that that evil is hereditary and it works its way through, but Hawthorne writes that a better philosopher than her would have found that a terrible idea. Believe that it's hereditary like that.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the exact phrasing there, but my recollection of that particular passage goes something like, it is hereditary in a deeper sense. That is, it will always be in human beings. But it doesn't necessarily
Because of your name.
it is in our blood,
Right.
but not in our family's blood. It's in the human blood. We have people like Judge Pinchin around even now. It's shocking. And they run, federal agencies.
Or states.
What's that?
Or states.
Or state agencies. All right, well, thank you. We will see you Thursday. Mr. Fuchs, I have a paper for you here.
Me?